What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We currently have Invest 92P that is rapidly organizing and developing off the coast of the Solomon Islands. It looks a lot better today than it did yesterday, and hell, it even looks a lot better now than it did just 12 hours ago. Let's go ahead and go back and show you the satellite imagery of what we got. We're going to go ahead and go back to 90 frames. That's about 15 hours back to kind of give you a genesis and a better understanding of what we were looking at. Here's where we were about 15 hours ago. We were seeing signs of organization and development around the Solomon Islands, and at that point, they were and technically still are getting pounded with heavy rainfall and gusty winds. But starting about 13:10 Zulu time, we started seeing increasing signs of organization and development just south of the Solomon Islands, and we are starting to see a new core starting to organize and develop around, I'd say, 9 to 10 degrees Celsius at this current point in time. And at this current point, it's not really showing signs of movement or really forward speed. However, we do see an incredibly good core, incredibly organized core, rather, of some stuff developing, and we're also starting to see that increased rotation going on across much of this thing. The outflow is really starting to ramp up. The outflow is always counterclockwise, and the inflow and the main circulation is clockwise. So, yeah, we're starting to see that contrast quite well. So, yeah, I would say in the next day or so, we're going to start seeing signs that a full-on cyclone is going to be developing. So that's what we have going on with the satellite imagery. Here's the current storm information at this current point in time. Here's what we have. Invest 92P currently has maximum sustained winds of 25 knots or 28 miles per hour. Its current location is 9.2 degrees south, 157.6 degrees east, and its minimum central pressure is at a shocking 999 millibars. The reason I say it's shocking is for a tropical depression of this caliber, you do not typically see a pressure like this. Typically, you see pressures of about maybe 1,004 at the max. This is 999 millibars. And this is indicative of one of two things. Either the storm is going to expand in size greatly and push the wind field even further out, or it's going to start organizing and rapidly developing. And based off the satellite imagery alone, I can verify that it is doing the latter. If we go ahead and show you the water vapor imagery to give you a better understanding of what we're looking at this current point in time, the water vapor imagery, where where a lot of this is surrounded, it's feeding off of a lot of moist air near the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea. There is a dry air slot south of that. However, based off what I'm seeing with the outflow, it looks like the outflow is beating out whatever this dry slot has to offer to try to weaken this. So, yeah, we're early in the cyclone season for the Solomon Islands and Australia, and already we are seeing a rapidly organizing potential tropical cyclone, which will be named Cyclone Jasper once it starts to organize and develop. So if you're tuning in from Brisbane, tuning in from Sydney, in fact, anywhere in Queensland, you guys need to be paying attention to this. And we'll continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. Here's the latest what we have from the computer models. Here's what we have from the GFS ensembles tracks at this current point. At this point yesterday, we were seeing like maybe 7, maybe 8 scenarios where we were looking at okay, this is the 4th of December. This is actually the new models that have just kicked in, but give me just a second. This is where we were at before. We were seeing about roughly half of the ensembles. In fact, when we reported on it yesterday, we were seeing like about 7 or 8 ensembles making landfall. Now, if we take a look at it, almost every ensemble has this thing making landfall in Queensland, about north of Brisbane for sure, but in some populated areas across parts of Queensland, you guys need to be paying attention, as now we're seeing more and more model runs kick in and more models show signs of organization and development. Here's the latest we have right here. It is anticipated that based off of what I'm seeing right there, that part of Queensland is going to be impacted. I'm just going to check to see which city that is because I'm not familiar with my Australian geography. I'm from the United States. That's between Townsville and Mackay. in Australia at this current point in time. So you guys need to be paying very serious attention. I know those are rather populated centers over there. So if you're in between Township and Mackay, you guys absolutely need to be paying attention. But really, anywhere from this part in Queensland all the way to Brisbane and arguably all the way down to Sydney, you guys should all be paying attention to this, as this has a potential major impact threat as we continue to go into the days. And matter of fact, another thing I want to mention is this thing isn't particularly a fast mover. Right now, it's moving at a rather slow pace at this current point in time. I don't think we have a movement tracker on this at this current point in time. I just know that this thing is very slowly moving. It's not even expected to impact Australia until the next 7 days. But those 7 days could basically make or break this whole system right here. And the reason I'm so concerned about it is all the models are now forecasting this to get to a severe cyclone strength. I'm not trolling when I say this. I am not kidding. This is what we're looking at, really hitting off the cyclone season with a bang, and here's what we have to show you for it. Here's the European model at this current point in time. As you can see, right here, this is in U.S. time, but this is about 0 Zulu time at this current point in time. So at this current point, we're on track according to the European. The European is having this thing organized and develop, getting down to the 980s millibar right there, becoming a cyclone as it starts to make its slow approach towards Australia. Then gets down to the 970s. Then it gets down to 969 millibars, as it enters a patch of very warm water, decent ocean heat content, and rather low wind shear. And the wind shear that is present is helping the outflow significantly. So we'll have to pay attention to that as time continues to go on. And then it starts to make its approach towards Australia. It's not going to take a very quick time. We're looking at a potential impact in the next week or so. However, in that week, we're looking at a potentially really quick strengthening period in this thing to maintain in its intensity. The European is actually forecasting this to make landfall in northeastern Queensland over here. So that's a pretty interesting situation because the rest of the models don't have it pushing that far north, and it doesn't have it hanging out in the southeastern Pacific with that much time. We're 9 days out by the time this thing makes landfall. So yeah, I'm not entirely trusting this, but what I can trust with the European is the real-time data and the conditions. If we go ahead and show you the wind shear that's showing right now is really helping enhance the outflow at this current point in time. It's not really doing that much to weaken it per se. It probably won't be until it makes the approach until Queensland when it really starts to ramp, the shear starts to ramp up, and the storm starts to run into some problems with the shear trying to tear it apart, and then you have a dry air situation at the same time, where very early on you don't really have that big of a problem. However, starting about 4 days out, we could, according to the European, potentially have some dry air intrusion if it doesn't go too well. If the outflow just kind of stops pushing out whatever dry air there is right here, well, we might have a dry air intrusion according to the European. But keep in mind, this initiated run is about 12 hours behind, and there's a lot of new developments that we have that are really showing on the real-time data right here. So this is definitely something to pay attention to for sure, and I'm still keeping a very close eye on it. And I'm not saying don't disregard the European at all. I'm saying quite the opposite. You should be using this model to kind of give a gauge of what may be going on, but you also should be factoring other models like the GFS, the Canadian model, the NavGem, and the Icon, the 5 main models we use here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. So we'll have to pay attention to that as time continues to go on, but the wind shear is not expected to weaken at this current point in time. Matter of fact, it's actually quite impressive that this is actually moving through an area of wind shear that's actually stronger than anticipated and organizing this quickly in the season. So that's rather impressive, at least in my opinion right there. But in the meantime, as we're showing you with the shear right here, it's not really forecasted to weaken that much. In the Europeans' case, it's actually heading towards this part of Queensland where there's not really that much wind shear to really try to stop it, but it's mainly the dry air that gets into it as it starts to approach Queensland and make landfall in that area. Either way, it still looks like it's going to be a destructive storm no matter what at this current point in time. So this is definitely something we all need to keep an eye on at this current point in time, and we will continue to update you as more information comes out. But before we go any further, we need to talk about the GFS model as well as some of the other conditions that I'm also noting, because if we go ahead and show you the global sea temperatures, at this current point in time. Where this is, just south of the Solomon Islands, is an area of about 29 degrees Celsius, which that is more than enough water for cyclone development. Cyclone development takes about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 27 degrees Celsius. I know I'm from the United States, so I don't use the metric system like you guys do in Australia, but please bear with me. I can do the conversion, so don't worry about that. But anyway, yeah, it's in a huge area of 28 plus degrees Celsius. Water's 29 degrees Celsius and up to 30 degrees Celsius near the Solomon Islands. So that's definitely a situation to keep an eye on. However, as it starts to approach Queensland, it starts to enter a little bit cooler waters, about 26 degrees Celsius, which isn't particularly catastrophic. It is definitely going to halt a rapid intensification phase if it does happen, but it's not catastrophic, and it's not going to kill the storm or anything like that. Now, if it heads down towards Sydney, that might be a different picture, because at this current point in time, the waters are still cold enough for really things to kind of die down before it gets down there. So definitely the track will play a huge role as to what happens next. But in the meantime, we have the GFS ensemble. Well, not the ensemble, we already showed you that, but the GFS operational, which is showing rapid intensification, getting down in the next 54 hours to a 956 millibar system as it approaches Queensland, becomes a severe cyclone and in the middle of the ocean right there, as it starts to bring some impacts towards the area of Queensland near Brisbane, near those two cities I was talking about. I'm going to go ahead and refresh myself. Mackay and Townsville, those two cities, that's what I'm concerned about. And look at this. The GFS is calling for a 936 millibar system right here. 936 millibars is equivalent, at least from what I'm looking at, to about a 130 mile per hour cyclone. It's not going to be that strong when it makes landfall. I can guarantee you that, because the wind shear is too strong and the sea surface temperatures start to decrease. However, the fact that this early out in the season, we're starting to see a bunch of situations where we have sub-940s millibar systems, that's a bit of an issue right there. And the GFS has this thing making landfall as a 964 millibar cyclone near Townsville, and then just really causing weakening due to land interaction, but still bringing a lot of flash flooding and a lot of gusty winds to a lot of Australia, including Brisbane and potentially Sydney with the remnants. So we will definitely have to pay attention to this as time continues to go on. And the last model I want to show you guys is the Canadian model, because the Canadian model has been a pretty interesting model, to say at the very least. It's been pretty consistent when it comes to tropical development, but the Canadian model, showing signs of organization and development, holds around the 980s millibar system. So there's a rather wide variability of how strong this gets. But the fact that this thing is developing much faster than even the Europeans anticipating at this current point is a bit concerning to say at the very least. And we will continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.